Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a totally fascinating data set of student reading assessments that completely reshapes how we think about a basic human skill. Have you ever scanned a page, sounded out every single word in your head, and then suddenly realized you have absolutely no idea what you just read? We've all been there, right? But what happens when that normal, everyday brain glitch becomes a student's default way of learning? Today, we're unpacking what we call the reading paradox.
So here is the central paradox we're digging into today. Can you read perfectly without actually understanding anything? It sounds like a trick question. Reading is understanding. Or at least that's what we pretty much all assume. But the data we're about to explore reveals a pretty shocking truth about how we actually measure learning in classrooms. It turns out, the physical mechanics of reading and the cognitive act of understanding are two totally different beasts. And conflating the two, well, it might be hiding some massive educational gaps.
To get to the bottom of this, we're looking at an incredibly detailed assessment spreadsheet that tracks over 30 students. These kids were tested across two different reading difficulties, which the data cleverly labels as 2 levels down and 3 levels down. For every single student, the assessors meticulously tracked their reading speed in words per minute, their word accuracy, and, completely separately, their reading comprehension. We're going to look really closely at how students perform when they're simply decoding words versus when they actually have to understand the text.
Okay, let's dive right into the numbers. We've got a snapshot of the first 3 students in the 2 levels down assessment. Notice the specific metrics we're tracking here: the student's name, their words per minute, their word reading level, and their comprehension level. You might already be spotting some pretty stark differences as you look across these rows. But before we totally geek out on the exact numbers, we need to quickly understand the language the assessors are actually using to grade these kids.
So, to make sense of all this data, the assessors use 3 distinct grading levels for both word reading and comprehension. First up is independent, and this is the highest proficiency. It basically means the student can handle the material entirely on their own. Second is instructional. This is your middle ground. The student is doing okay, but definitely needs some guidance and support from a teacher. And finally, frustration. Just like it sounds, this means the student is facing a really significant struggle and the material is just too difficult for them to process right now. Keep these 3 levels in your head because they are the baseline for everything we're about to see.
Let's jump back to our data set and zero in on student B. Look at the word reading score. Student B is ranked as independent, scoring a near-flawless 99% accuracy. They are practically perfect at reading the words out loud. But then, look at the comprehension score. When it comes to actually understanding, they plunge all the way down to the frustration level, scoring just 40%. It's a complete paradox, right? They are reading the words, but they're absolutely not absorbing the story.
And what's really wild here is the sheer speed involved. Student B isn't just accurate. They are fast, like really fast. They burn through this text at 151 words per minute with 99% accuracy. That is incredibly proficient mechanical reading. Yet, despite blazing through it, when they were asked what they just read, they only got 4 out of 10 comprehension questions right. They are essentially acting as a high-speed reciter, not a reader.
Now, you might be sitting there wondering, okay, is student B just a weird anomaly? Let's look at the larger data set in the 3 levels down assessment to see if this paradox actually holds true across a wider group of kids. In this assessment, we have a pool of 32 students reading a completely different passage. This one is exactly 141 words long, and they're tested with 8 comprehension questions at the very end. Let's see what happens.
Yep, it is absolutely a massive trend. Check out student F, student U, and student Y. Every single one of them is reading well over 100 words per minute. All 3 of them scored in that top independent tier for word reading with 97 to 99% accuracy. Yet look at the comprehension column. Student F got 25%, student Y got 25%, and look specifically at student U. They scored 97% in word reading, but a staggering 13% in comprehension. They literally only answered 1 out of 8 questions correctly. They are completely stuck in that frustration tier for understanding.
So, what we're seeing here brings us to an absolutely crucial concept: decoding. Decoding is simply the mechanical act of recognizing and sounding out words completely independent of grasping their actual meaning. These students are brilliant decoders. Their brains are processing the visual symbols on the page and translating them into sounds with machine-like efficiency. But that bridge between decoding those sounds and actually painting a picture in their minds, the comprehension part, is completely broken.
Okay, zooming back out, let's pivot to the final column of the data set.
We've seen the independent decoders who just can't comprehend, and we've seen the students who are frustrated at every single level. But how on earth do educators and school systems combine these wildly differing scores into one final grade? Well, the spreadsheet gives us a column called the Final Reading Profile, which attempts to synthesize this massive contradiction into a single, neat little metric.
And this right here reveals the massive risk of oversimplifying data. Look at students G, Q, and AA. In word reading, they are rock stars, independent. In comprehension, they are struggling immensely, frustration. But look at their final profile. They are labeled instructional. The spreadsheet literally just averages out a high independent word reading score and a low frustration comprehension score to create a middle-of-the-road final grade.
It's honestly kind of crazy because you have this massive spike for word reading, a deep valley for comprehension, and the resulting average just sits right in the middle, looking totally normal. This instructional label might actually be completely masking the student's severe lack of understanding. It artificially boosts their final grade through sheer reading speed and phonetic accuracy, giving teachers and parents the illusion that the student is doing okay and maybe just needs a little nudge, when in reality, they aren't understanding a single concept they are reading.
So, wrapping this all up, what should you really take away from this? Well, first, speed and accuracy in reading out loud absolutely do not guarantee understanding. Second, we have definitive, hard proof that independent word readers often secretly score at the frustration level when it comes to comprehension. And finally, relying on a synthesized final profile metric can dangerously average out and hide critical learning gaps. This specific breakdown of the numbers is so important because if we don't separate decoding from understanding, millions of kids are going to slip right through the cracks, sounding great while understanding absolutely nothing.
Which leaves us with a pretty heavy question based on the data we've just unpacked today. Are we truly teaching students to read, or are we just teaching them to recite? It's a critical distinction, and one that completely changes how we measure true literacy. Thanks so much for exploring this data with me on today's Explainer, and I'll catch you next time.